Hey, today we're going to go through the UAV Tech Discord, see what we see on there for some people we can help out, and then me try to catch up on all these people have tagged me over here and I haven't gotten to them yet. So today's catch up day. It's raining outside. Let's look at some logs to see if we can help some folks out on some flight performance issues they're having. I'm going to do this in a speed round kind of format. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave those down below. Let's get into it. First, we got to take care of the Patreons first. First one we got here is tip on the 70 hertz spike he's seeing on his signal, and also a general look at the tune. Pulling it up in black box, looking at the raw traces here, we got, looks like pretty good performance, not a lot of motor vibration going on there. And roll, we got pitch, and then yaw's not looking too bad. We do have this spike. You can see it a little bit right here on yaw, and we do have it right here on roll. And then obviously the D term amplifies the bejesus out of that because that's what the D term does. So you can see that huge spike right there. And he's looking at, you know, what is that? What's going on there? Pulling up the PIDs here real quick. You see PIDs are not that high, 30, 39 for the Ds. Everything else seems pretty normal. It does have the low pass filters turned off. Does have the minimum for the dynamic notch 125, minimum for the RPM filters, and then has a normal amount of D-term filter. But this is not a filter specific issue. There's some sort of PID or resonance issue that he's got going on here. If you look, you can see honestly with the sticks that this thing is a pretty high powered quad, right? You can see that. That's one of the first things I look at is, hey, how close is this thing tracking the stick movements? And this thing is like butter. It is right on it. You just are not going to get that in any other firmware, honestly. But really powerful motors on this. And I mean, man, look at this. Even on the flipping, you know, going down the other side of the, you know, the rate here coming back to zero. Usually you see a little bit of lag there because you have the super rate component here. But there, we have this little bit of overshoot, but that's really nothing. I wouldn't even think of bothering with that. But man, look how on the rates he is on this thing. Even if I expand this out to a couple 100%, there's just no delay there whatsoever. Just impressive. Very impressive. Good job. Good build. Good everything there. So just pulling up the roll axis specifically and zooming out a little bit, I can see it right here. What you can do is just gonna kind of confirm. You can measure peak to peak, and you can see that's the 68. I can easily make that closer to a 70, and that and it just depends on that specific peak. Like you can see here, that's around the 68 mark too. 70. There you go, 73. So 68, 70. That's the oscillation he has. My first instinct is thinking that what I would do on this is maybe these gains are just a touch high and you're at that flutter point. So what I would do is grab that master multiplier and slide these down a little bit so that, you know, you're in for the D gains on the roll axis, these are the high 20s. And, you know, even, you know, bring that down. If you still see it, bring that down so the D gains on the roll axis are down around maybe 25. If you're anything lower than 25, it's probably not that, I would guess. That should subside with bringing these gains down, is my guess. So outside of that, it's got to be something shaking around in your quad, so make sure everything is stable. That's my advice. Lower the gains. That should fix it if had my guess. And if it doesn't, if you're down at D gains a low 25 or whatnot and still's there, I would just double check your quad. Make sure. I had somebody the other day where their capacitor the wire was yanking, or the way they had the capacitor mounted in some way, shape, it was like kind of yanking on the flight controller or hitting the flight controller. I told them to check, make sure the capacity, no wires are hitting the flight controller in somewhere where, or if a wire just hits that gyro in somewhere where it can cause issues. He did that, solved it. Check for that kind of stuff, of course, as well. Let's move on to the next one. Next one here, gentleman has Toothpickk, used to fly fine. Now it's stopped. Now it pulls hard to the left, kind of forces him to react. It does this in pulses. I can't tell if it's his motors or a bad ESC, something that I might not notice. Can you tell me if there's anything wrong by looking at the log? Let's take a look. Same deal, trace template 0. This is his log, and you can see right there the motors kind of like freak out, and look at his sticks right here. See how it's like, oh, pulls him left. He's pulling right. It's pulling left. He pulls right. Almost like it looks like his sticks are going left, and then he goes right. And then he pulls right, pulls right, pulls right, pulls right, pulls right. So it's something with these vibrations and oscillations here. Let's see if we can ascertain more by looking around. Quick reminder, if you're ever looking at your own logs and you land before you, or you bounce before you disarm, make sure you always go to the back of the log here before you look at any of these noise plot things, and trim that off by hitting the O key so you don't get that part of it, because it will skew. You'll see like things in these noise plots that you don't, are just you bouncing off the ground. It doesn't look like too much here when just looking at the raw, but when I look at the D term, you can see this stuff. Look at that, how amplitude. This should be like troughed out, and you should see vibrations up here, not in this zone. So that's bad. Go into here. You can see, yeah, it's a lot of that's getting through. There's just some stuff happening at the low frequencies. If I go over to trace template 1, zoom out a little bit, you can see where these pulses are occurring. And it's making the D term go crazy. So I don't know that anything is jumping out at me at Y, other than that there's some mechanical issue that's adding a lot of vibrations to it. Specifically, it looks mostly on, it's on pitch too, but it's mostly on the roll. So let's look on the roll axis here, zoom in a little bit. Yeah, and you can kind of see those vibrations. It's something, it's not like the little motor spiky vibrations. It's something a little less. So if I measure point to point here, something around the 50 hertz range, which is all those different spikes. And it's obviously, if I look at this, it's, you know, I measured 50 hertz there, but it's in this whole region. So some of those I'd measure point to point would be down at the 40s, some would be up at the 60s. I just happened to measure one that was around the 50 range, looking at that. So there's definitely an issue there. Let's look at the PIDs real quick. So what I would do if I were you on this one is, again, I would take that master slider down. It used to fly fine, but now it doesn't. I would grab that master slider, slide that down. So these are like high 40s, and see if that helps. It looks like you have some decent filtering here. 120 is the low, 100 is the low here. Got the low pass on one. Yeah, these look okay. You could, well, you're never going to get the, I mean, at the end of the day, you can only lower these PIDs. You're never going to get these filters low enough to address stuff down at 50 hertz. You can't do that. It's the lowest you can do is like 80s for big rigs and stuff like that. So yeah, filters I think are fine. It's not that. It's, I would lower these PIDs down. They're not helping it. Something's an issue there resonance wise. I guess what I also would do before I even do that is I would just just go over everything, because it seems like this is in pulses, right? So you can see the motor's just freaking out, freaking out, freaking out, and then freaking out again. Go, okay, it's just keeps freaking out. You can see those pulses just have room, and those oscillations are what's causing it to get kind of unstable and pull all around. So check the motors, check the props, check the bells. If you crashed it and you didn't replace the props, do that. That's nice and cheap and easy to do. Maybe it's just the props, especially if you have some bi-blades on this little toothpick. Those kinks are freaking trouble to begin with. So I would change the props out, check everything, make sure it's tightened up. Again, check the flight controller, make sure things aren't hitting it, make sure it's nice and tight, that it didn't like come loose in the stack. Just give it a good mechanical, you know, going through. Then if it still is the issue, I would drop the PID gains down so they're high 40, see if that helps, or if it just kind of, it's almost like a covering it up if you still might have this issue. Okay, this next one is a THICC 3 with Bounceback. Believe it's just a general look at the tune, so we'll take a look. This is going to be an easy one. So here is the pitch access, which with a THICC, there's tons and tons of inertia on that access. You can see right here, this is the gyro. So this is what it, or I'm sorry, this is the sticks. This is the commands. And you can see pitch access right here, going down to 0 right there. So it's a forward flip and going back to 0. And then this is the actual quad. Look how much gap that is. I mean, that gap between there and there, just quickly eyeballing, it's like 75 milliseconds. Maybe a little less, something like, yeah, 70 milliseconds, something like that. Big delay. It's bounce back right here. See that bounce back? See this I term? That's what's causing it. This I term is yanking it to bounce back. It's the bounce back is not, the flight controller is telling it to bounce back, because of the I term. That's the issue. So to fix this, we need to go in here and set the I term relax lower. You already got it at an 8. I would reduce it even more to a 5. I don't care if you have, and I would set this to, instead of gyro, to set point. Set your I term relax mode to set point, and then change this from an 8 down to a 5. That should take care of it. That should lock out this I term longer. You can see it's locked from here to here, but we want to lock it out actually all the way past here because of this significant delay. Same issue here. You're actually getting some bounce back on the roll, so it's bouncing back this way, and it's like going like kind of like that. It's kind of like going like that. That's also because it's being drugged to do that right here with this I term there, and that should, you can see it's locked out from here to here, but bring that even further. You know, I would set your I term relax to set point, but you could flip it back to gyro too. Try both ways there, because this locking of I term here, I don't believe will happen with setting it to set point. I think it would only lock it here. So this could actually be helpful in that regard. Oh, and don't try to like tighten this up with feed forward and all that jazz. It's not that. It's this right here. Look, you can see your motors are maxed out. So your motors, it's just so heavy that you're just, you would need bigger motors to make this not so bad, this so far in between here. You're maxing out, you know, it's calling 100% of 4 motors here. It's not in this, it's probably an octo stacked motors, but it's calling 4 of them to spin up to 100% to arrest this. And it's given all the chooch she got, and it's just still not, you know, quite enough to close this gap. Now this down here shouldn't be happening. This I term is winding up because this gap is so big, and that's why we need to lock it out a little bit more with that I term relax, like I just talked about. And then from that point here, this isn't maxing out the motors down here for it to come down on the set point. It's just when it's trying to give it the full break, it's given she's all she's got. So don't be trying to shorten up this gap. It's not going to happen without mechanical changes to the motors. Same thing. You can see it here. Same I term. See that I term issue happening there. So it's same thing here. You can see that I term. See how the I term shape looks like the gyro shape looks like the I term? That's how you know which term it is. You look at the shape of the bounce back or whatever thing you have, and does that look what term does it look like? Does this shape look like the D term? No. Does it look like the P term? No, it doesn't. P term's like way up here. It's way down here. But look how the similarities in magnitude and just everything there between the P, I, and D. It's definitely the I term. I mean, it's not even a question. That's what it is. And with that, let's move on to the next one. And this one we got an X class, and it's trying to spin it up, but the motors are differential speeds. He's not able to get this thing off the ground. One thing he was looking at here is some T motor advice, something about pulling away that the min throttle is 40%. Don't do that. Your min D shot percent should be enough that the motors spin well at idle, but nothing more than that. So don't be setting them up 40. This thing might take off. You might not be able to get it back down at 40. That's very likely at 40. So don't do that. I would say it's probably going to be 10, 15 at the very most, but depends how much weight you have on this. Sometimes these big prop X classes are pretty light, so just be cautious with that. Do not go very high. I had one that min throttle, it was a 10-inch. Min throttle was like, it hovered at like 12%. And that's with a pretty big battery. So just be very careful with that. Let's take a look at this here and see the issue. Ooh. All right, spin it up, armed it. On. Just testing it and kind of rolling it left, rolling it right, rolling it front, rolling it back a little bit. So everything looks good. Motors are working well there. But then when he throttles up, I think he's just throttling straight up there. And it's just picking the ass end up. Nope. There he went, try to give it some chooch, and it kind of looks like those front props might have touched and hit a little bit, stalled them out. It didn't work out too well, but at least it didn't break anything. Well, yay. All right, let's take a look at the log. Okay, so this one took me a little bit to figure out, but your I term is winding up when you are on the ground here. You can see in this spot right here, it leans back as you're trying to spin up the motors, and that is causing you to push the stick front here, and that's what caused that at the very end there. You actually pushed the stick front as you were doing that to kind of compensate, and it overreacted a little bit there and caused that. So I think what I would probably try to do to convince yourself of this a little bit more is just go into the CLI on all the terms and take the I term down on all of them. Set it to 0. X, or in the roll, pitch, and yaw. I am saying this just so you can get it to a hover. When you do this and you get it off the ground, it is going to be super sloppy. Lot of input's going to be needed to keep it kind of hovering nice. Or take those I gains and set them really, really low, like 5, 2, 1, something super low. That doesn't necessarily help all the way because it just causes it to wind up a lot more. The other thing I'm seeing here that's throwing me off, and I don't understand exactly why, is like this says 1, 1, and 1, but your sticks are at 0. See, it says 0, 0, 0 for deflection here. This is trace template 1. I don't know if I'm just not reading things right or something there, but I don't know why the I term is winding up here, honestly. But that, I think, is your main issue. So we can take I term easily out of the picture just by setting those gains to 0. Give that a shot. Hopefully it figures it out, because I know you've been struggling with this issue for a little bit. All right, well, that should be enough. Hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully a little lightning round. If you guys enjoyed this content, please give me a like. Throw any comments down below just to help the analytics, and if you like something like this. Thanks, everybody. See you in the next.